Welcome to the Home Organizing for Beginners podcast. In today's episode, I'll share how to organize your pantry without taking everything out first. I'm Tammy, a busy wife and mom just like you with a whole household to manage. For most of my kids' infant to tween years, I experienced debilitating self-doubt in how I managed all the things at home and work because of the perfection our society seems to expect of us as moms. After finally recognizing that my home wasn't the peaceful home I wanted it to be because I was pursuing perfection, I began to research and make changes. And I'm here to help you make changes too. Changes that put you, your family, and your current season of life at the core of it all. And this is what's going to bring you a peaceful home that you desire. So let's dive into today's content. Have you seen the pictures of pantries where everything is so neat and organized? The cereal is in clear containers, there's cute baskets all lined up on the shelves with beautifully scripted labels. I'm sure you've seen these. I'm sure you felt like, why can't I have that? I know I have. They do look really nice, don't they? So those pictures, dare I say, of perfection aren't what we should be chasing. They just aren't functional. It's not real life. At least it's not real life for me, and I'm sure you feel the same way. So let's walk through it once. Let's look at this once, right? You want that beautiful space. So let's think of the functionality. You get home from the grocery store, you're putting the groceries away, you've got the beautiful clear containers, you open up a box of Cheerios to pour it into the container and you're like, that little bit left on the bottom, that might be a problem. I don't want that to stay down there and be stale. I believe in first in, first out, right? Like you want to use up all of the old stuff before you use up the new stuff. So what are you going to do? You decide, okay, I'll pour it into a bowl. Now the container is empty. You pour the whole box of Cheerios into the container, but now you realize that the rest of it that's in the bowl isn't going to fit. So this just isn't functional. I mean, can you picture that? It's not a productive use of your time. So I assume if you enjoy spending your time this way, you're probably not listening to this podcast. So what should we be shooting for? And I've been talking about functionality. We should be shooting for organization in our homes that is functional. It has to work for you. It has to work for your kids and for your current season of life. I'm certainly not saying that your pantry has to or should stay a mess, but it can be organized, functional, and effective. And that is what I'm going to teach you today. So I have 4 steps for you. Pantry organizing step number 1. You're going to start small. Have you ever carved out an entire day to take all of the stuff out of your pantry, get everything cleaned up? Even if you have a small pantry, this is a big task and a really big expectation of yourself. Because when you take everything out of your pantry and you set it on the counters, now your counters and maybe your dining room table, everything is full and everything is there. And yes, you have a clear pantry and you can wipe everything down all at once. But now you have to deal with all of this stuff that's all over your counters. And you have to make decisions. You have to make decisions on what to keep, what to put back. And sometimes it can be overwhelming. You can get decision fatigue. Have you ever heard of that? We already make so many decisions in a day as moms that having this extra decision making might really put us over the top and we end up with this big mess. Pantry's clean, but you end up with this huge mess all over your counters. I do not want that for you. So instead, I recommend that you start small. You select one shelf or even a portion of a shelf. Build some momentum, build some success in this one small section before you dive into the rest. And I want you to be able to fit this into your normal daily activities instead of carving out a whole day, taking a day of vacation, or spending an entire weekend doing this job. When you download the free home organizing checklist at www.homeorganizingforbeginners.com, you'll get extra information about decision fatigue. We have more than enough decisions to make in the day, and when you organize an area of your home, you can put together a decision strategy. So, when you're organizing your pantry, you really want to have a decision strategy before you get started. So, this helps you walk through the process of making the decisions before you actually get started on your project. When you have this in hand before you start, you'll be able to sort through all of the things easily and more quickly. So, if you have this, I know you've done this because I've done this probably far too many times, but you find this really great recipe and you're like, I'm going to make this. And you go buy these very specific ingredients. And then when it comes time to make it, something blows up, you don't have any time, and you end up never making that very specific recipe. All right. So then you have these things in your pantry. What are you going to do with them? It's very likely that they cost more than the normal things that you're buying. So when you have a decision strategy in advance, you know how you're going to handle these things already. So again, if you download the free checklist at www.homeorganizingforbeginners.com, decision strategy is a part of that, and I really go into detail on how to craft that decision strategy. So, you've started small, you simply select a shelf or a section of a shelf, then you continue on to the next step. Pantry organizing step number 2, sort. As you take items out of the small section that you've selected, you're going to decide what you're going to do with each one. Will they go back into the pantry? Are you going to throw them away? Maybe you're going to give them to a food pantry or to a friend. But what you're going to do is you're going to separate them into different piles. So you've taken a can of Cheerios out of the pantry. Are you going to keep it? Is it going to go back into the pantry, or are you going to get rid of it? So you put that in one area of your countertops or your table, whatever the case may be. If it's something that you're going to throw it away right away. Does that make sense? So you're sorting everything as you're pulling stuff out. And if you've picked a small, manageable section, this isn't going to take you very long to do. So after your small section is cleared, you can wipe it down or you can clean it as needed. Then you move on to the next step. Pantry organizing step number 3, organize. Now that you have a pile of things that you're planning to keep in your pantry or in that section of pantry, you can see kind of what you're dealing with. These are the items that will go back into the space. And personally, I have very few bins or baskets because when people think of organizing, that's what they're thinking of. What cute basket can I get? Color-coded bins? What kind of labels? And instead of doing that, let's really make sure that it's functional for you first. Okay? So if it looks pretty, but it doesn't actually function well for you, then it's just going to be a mess again, pretty short order, right? So once the pantry is fully organized and has been functioning as needed for some time, that's when you can think about making it look nicer with baskets or bins. And in all honesty, I literally have one basket and one bin. The bags of chips go in the basket, and in the bin, I have like candy for the kids because it was like spilling all over the place. Too much candy, always, right? So when you focus on the function, you think through how you and your family use the space every day. If you put something in a bin, will the kids put it back in the bin? If so, that's great. And if you can teach them to do that, but if they're too little or they're just, it's not that important to you, then don't put the items in a bin, right? Just put them on the shelf. It'll be fine. So let me address what you may be thinking. But now only part of the pantry is organized, right? You just have this little section or this shelf, and you're not done organizing the whole thing. It's okay. It's not going to get messy if you put measures in place to prevent that from happening. And that's pantry organizing step number 4, sustain. Now that this portion of your pantry is organized, you'll take a few moments to document what you are expecting everyone in your family to do. And I like to call it and think through, in the heat of the moment, what am I going to do to put this item away? So that's what's called a functional expectation. So let's talk through this a little bit. Whoever cooks in your home should be part of this entire process. So when you're cooking dinner and need to use something in the space, what are you expecting of yourself? You need to be able to put the thing away or to find it easily, right? That's going to save you time. That's what's going to make cooking easier when you can find what you need. So again, it's called functional expectations. And if we use an example of spices, so if you have your spices in your pantry, which is where I have them, or even in a cabinet near the stove, when you use that item, will you put that item away as soon as you're done using it? Or are you going to set it on the counter for a while and put it away when you're cleaning up the kitchen? Either way, if you've got a kid on your hip and little kids running around asking you to play with them, that's in the heat of the moment. What are you going to do? How are you going to put that item away? All right, does that make sense? That's functional expectations. So you can ask yourself, does the newly organized portion of your pantry work for you or against you? Another example that I like to use would be cereal. And I do have 3 adult-sized teenagers in my house, so cereal is just kind of a big thing for us. You're expecting kids to empty one full box of cereal before they dive into the next, right? So we do like a 2-bin system. So I have 2 boxes of Rice Krispies or 2 boxes of Cheerios or 2 boxes of, Fruity Pebbles. Fruity Pebbles. They love Fruity Pebbles. So I have 2 boxes. And what has happened in the past is they empty one of the boxes down to just a little bit left in the bottom, but it doesn't make a full bowl. So they put that back in the pantry and they grab the next box the next time they go to eat cereal. Well, now I have a whole bunch of boxes in the pantry and just a little bit of cereal in each. And then they get upset when we run out of cereal. So a functional expectation is to empty one whole box before you open another. All right. So I hope that that makes sense. So in conclusion, as a summary, I'm going to go through these 4 steps again, just summarize them. Step number 1, you're going to start small. Step number 2, you're going to sort through the items in that small section. Step number 3, you've now sorted and you see what you can organize back into it. So step number 3 is organize. And step number 4 is sustain. This is where you're going to put measures in place to keep the organized space organized. That's what I have for you today. I pray that what I shared with you today will help you work towards the peaceful home that you desire. Have a fun and productive weekend. I'll be back here next week sharing tangible and simple instructions about home organizing, cleaning, and time management. I'll see you then.